Welcome to this session on building a better network. My name is Graham Brown and I'm the Managing Director here at Gyrocom. What we can see on the screen is a simplistic representation of most corporate network environments that we run into today. It's using private networks, typically MPLS, to backhaul data connectivity from the distributed estate to the corporate data center where the majority of corporate applications reside. For smaller locations, then equivalent functionality where it doesn't make sense to run a private network connection, that can be delivered by an internet-based VPN. So this is appropriate when applications are in the corporate data center and users are in the office locations. The cost is relatively low, but depending on location and distribution, the complexity is low, and the value is perfectly adequate and fit for purpose within that sort of use case. Our challenges arise typically based on an acceleration of how technology and how businesses are reliant on the deployment of technology. So the use case for technology is going up, but also because our applications are migrating outside of the borders of our environment, as are our users. So the utilization for internet-based VPNs sort of being replaced and bringing that back into the private network, adding cost. The bandwidth requirements out to the distributed estate are increasing with the use of things like voice and video and media-rich content and those sort of environments. But data is still being backhauled to the data center. The definition of what's required from a security standpoint at the perimeter of our environment, typically defined at the data center, is becoming much more complex, much more expensive. The number of appliances that we need to apply there. And because of our reliance on technology, we also have to provide disaster recovery. So we're paying for everything twice, a dual data center type of strategy. Our users, our third parties, our customers are out and about in the ether from all locations. So there's an inbound requirement as well, adding further complexity, adding further cost. And value is going up. We're providing more services, but the cost and complexity are going up at a much quicker rate. So this is the development of the environment as we saw it in the first representation. We also have a requirement for resilience. An increasing requirement for resilience, which is something the business doesn't get any direct value back from. It's just there as an insurance policy and something ideally you don't want to use. Our applications, as I say, are moving outside of the corporate data center, our line of business applications. So the applications that are bespoke to us as a business are moving out to infrastructure as a service. So connectivity to those sort of environments is an additional complexity we need to be able to deal with, typically straight directly from the data center. A lot of our productivity applications and equivalents are being replaced by software as a service, which means that we have an increasing reliance on the internet as a corporate delivery mechanism, one that we can't actually directly control, so we need to bear that in mind as well. And when our applications are out in the Ethernet or in the cloud, then providing direct connectivity from the distributed estate is a very real conversation. But it does cause, the same security challenges that we're looking to address with all of these appliances at the data center out at the branch, because you've got that security vector, access to our corporate environment, our secured behind the hard shell of our perimeter. Once you put an internet connection into the branch. So securing that with security architecture out at the branch is becoming an increasing conversation, and that can get very expensive very quickly if you're a largely distributed environment such as retail organizations and those sort of environments. So we've got problems everywhere. We've got challenges everywhere. It's becoming a very unwieldy base. This quite simplistic diagram has developed into something that is incredibly complex and incredibly expensive to be able to maintain. And as a consequence of that, actually the value is going down because the pace of business delivery still requires things to move forward. And the ability for internal infrastructure and the internal network to be able to keep up with this level of complexity and this level of cost becomes increasingly difficult to achieve. So what can we do about that? How do we unpick some of these challenges? And here at Gyrocom, we're looking at two specific technology sets deployed together to allow us to address a lot of the challenges that we see with this environment. And specifically, those are software-defined WAN, or software-defined wide area networks, and cloud-based security gateways. And particularly the delivery solution from a cloud security perspective of Zscaler. So what does that actually mean? Well, software-defined WAN allows us to have the same experience as a private network, but using any connectivity medium. So it allows us to bond together MPLS links and commodity-based broadband in order to deliver the connectivity in the most appropriate way, whether it be internal to our environment or external to our environment, because we can make intelligent routing decisions in software as opposed to being reliant on hardwired routing decisions back through a private network. In addition to that, it also provides a lot more flexibility, a lot more agility, and it gives organizations all of their visibility back in terms of what's going on within their environment. So there's lesser reliance on the security architectures, because it can be used to service chain the new set of services that are being delivered out in the cloud, such as Zscaler. And it allows us to have a much less reliant on the private MPLS connections, giving back a whole cost base from within the business. So using broadband, commodity-based broadband connections rather than resilient MPLS connections. Actually, what we're seeing is some customers have been able to migrate away completely from MPLS and deliver their services entirely through broadband connections and 3G, 4G type of data connections. So some customers have got multiple broadband connections delivered from multiple providers in order to be able to deliver an equivalent service to that they used to have to pay through their private MPLS. And as we can see, we have less reliance on connectivity out to, dedicated connectivity out to our infrastructure as a service, so where a lot of our line of business applications exist today. And we can start to unpick some of the really complicated security gateways by replicating that functionality out of the cloud security gateways and the service that you take from organizations such as Zscaler. So what we see is that the cost and the complexity of these environments come down and the value go up incrementally. And we're seeing a new set of architectures that are helping addressing the problems that organizations face today, rather than being reliant on an architecture that was built for the problems that you had 15 years ago. Thank you.